See how you guys are doing. I wanted to tell Sam, so I am a libertarian, but I'm a libertarian socialist. I just wanted to let you know that kind of that thought exists out there, that there are libertarians and they can be saved. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I am aware. I am aware of the libertarian socialists. So what does that mean? You no central government, is that it?
Well, I mean, like, I think like conversations about that are like a little bit preemptive, but basically, yeah, like decentralized, localized, direct democracy between confederated, like small states, you know, like maybe towns or cities, and they kind of come together. And it's just like a very bottom-up structure instead of a top-down structure.
Right.
And it's just an emphasis on, you know, local cooperation and freedom, you know?
Yeah. What and what's the point of that? What do you think you get out of that you don't get now?
Well, I think it's just like a lot of like more equality, you know what I mean? And it's just like everyone working together towards a common goal. And
so like
I think yeah.
When we look at some place like Ferguson, for instance.
Yep.
The locality there now, under the Obama administration, the police force was under a DOJ order that was taken off when Jeff Sessions came in. What do you do about a situation like that, where actually the same dynamics that you have on any other level take place there, but are actually much harder to dislodge?
You're talking about like, you know, like racial resentment between two different types of groups in the same community? Or?
I mean, you could do racial resentment. You could do corruption. I mean, I don't know where in Mass you live, but if you live in Whitensville, you probably know that the level of corruption there, if you're an insider in Whitensville, is higher than it would be even on the state level.
Right. No, yeah, and I think a lot of, I mean, like, it's not about a direct transitory, just like right from here, like from the situation we are now to an idealist of sort of like, you know, a communist or any sort of like extreme far leftist society. I mean, obviously there's a lot of progress that we have to make. And I think a lot of people, especially socially, you know what I mean? And the reason I kind of called in was because I think your guest kind of had it right, where I think a lot of what like divides us is artificial. And if we can like come to get like, if like mutual cooperation is honestly the most efficient way and the best way for everyone. And I think a lot of data backs that up. And especially like when you think about corruption and any sort of like racial resentment or things like that, I think it's driven more by like a personal sort of, like, a lot of those people need justifications for the way that they think or they do. And if we can break through those, that would lead to a better, you know, it's like a better society for everyone. So, I mean, I think especially corruption and, you know, societal discord are mostly due to the things that divide us. And that before we would transition to some sort of like idealist or sort of society, those are the conversations that we need to have. So
yeah,
it's like,
I agree with you.
You'd
totally
have to deal with those problems first.
Yeah, I mean, the only problem I have with what you're saying is that I don't know what the magic elixir is going to be to make people people better. I mean, if and I think this is if the idea of full-on socialism or you know, even communism is that you cannot allow any of the any capitalism to exist, because eventually its will to power is such that it will you know, those embers will catch fire and will eventually subsume the common benefit.
Well, it's not just that, though. Like economic crises are endemic to capitalism, and they're going to keep happening as long as we have it.
Well, I mean, I think it's possible economic crises might be, you know, part of everything, but any type of system that you have. But maybe not, but nevertheless,
the economy.
But nevertheless, if the idea is that a little bit of capitalism can be bad, you know, in the context of a society because it can come roaring back in terms of power, I would just suggest that capitalism does not exist floating around. That it is an idea that is born out of some people who want to exert their will, and they will do that in any context, and that it's pretty easy to have local communities go sideways, and if you don't provide any type of state counterbalance to it, I mean, broader, you know, in our instance, federal counterbalance, I think there are times where it's a problem. I mean, slavery. And now, granted, slavery, I know, was certainly maybe not fully a product of capitalism, but certainly capitalism was the fuel that drove that. But there was also, you know, a mentality. I'm not saying that in this day and age we have slavery, but the idea of like, we're going to oppress certain people in our you know, smaller societies or our smaller, you know, localities, and just like I just have witnessed it living in a small rural town, man. It's like just even the people you see a decent amount of sort of, you know, small scale corruption, but it's
people helping people.
I mean, look,
just hey, not to press you, dude, but legitimate question. As a libertarian socialist, how are you not calling in about Rojava? What's up with
that? I guess I don't know much about that. I mean, I'm not like
actually not to
super,
be, but actually read about it because it will give you some concrete examples of what you're interested in.
Oh yeah, it's
definitely.
And by the way, it's totally fair to say I don't know enough about this to comment on it. I feel like more people should say that. But I think what our caller was saying was that libertarian socialism is not an ideology that can be applied in a vacuum. And sometimes in order to move us towards a libertarian socialist horizon, whatever you want to call it, it will involve moving through a phase of more government and more state power. Like, we know that right-wing libertarians are our enemies. We know that these quote-unquote small government conservatives are our enemies. I would prefer social democracy to that. Certainly everyone would on this show. And that involves a certain amount of greater state intervention. So you have to apply it in a smart way on a case-by-case basis, looking at the conditions on the ground. But another society that I think is a really good example of libertarian socialism in action are the Zapatistas in Chiapas. And I actually went to go visit them in a town called Oventique, where they let outsiders come, and I learned a little bit about their society and their mode of governance, which is basically a libertarian socialist society. The towns that are controlled by Zapatistas are kind of federated together, and they have these councils. Usually the terms on the councils are very short. People are selected, not any standardized way. They can volunteer, or people can volunteer them, and they make all the decisions in accordance with these assemblies of townspeople. And like, you can say, yeah, the people in Chiapas are culturally and ethnically homogenous, and this could never scale up. This could never work for a big, diverse place like the U.S. And, you know, you partly have a point there. There are challenges involved. There's all kinds of bourgeois ideologies that divide people from one another, like racism, sexism, homophobia, et cetera, et cetera. But I really think that we're going to have to overcome them if we ever want to win and create some kind of better world for ourselves.
Appreciate the call. Mark.